It began with a document few people outside the royal inner circle were ever supposed to see. Hidden among decades of personal records and private reflections was a journal entry, reportedly written by Prince Philip himself. For years, it remained buried within archives associated with the late Duke of Edinburgh. Then came claims that Princess Anne had finally reviewed its contents, and what she allegedly discovered would trigger one of the most explosive royal controversies in recent memory. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For decades, Prince Philip cultivated a reputation as one of the monarchy's most direct and uncompromising figures. He was admired by some for his honesty, criticized by others for his bluntness, but rarely accused of hiding what he truly thought. That is precisely why reports surrounding this alleged journal entry have generated such intense interest. According to persistent claims circulating among royal commentators and palace insiders, the document was not simply another routine reflection from a senior royal. Instead, it allegedly contained observations that Philip never intended for public discussion during his lifetime. The suggestion alone was enough to send waves of speculation through royal circles. If a man known for speaking his mind had chosen to record private concerns rather than voice them openly, many began asking the same question. What was so sensitive that even Prince Philip preferred silence? The controversy deepened when reports emerged that Princess Anne had been reviewing archived family materials connected to her father's legacy. Anne has long been viewed as one of the most disciplined and loyal members of the royal family, someone who rarely participates in public drama and almost never fuels palace gossip. Because of that reputation, her alleged involvement gave the story a level of credibility that rumors often fail to achieve. Observers noted that if Anne had indeed encountered something unexpected among her father's papers, she would not have treated it lightly. Palace advisors reportedly became increasingly interested in understanding the context surrounding the entry, while royal watchers began piecing together years of unresolved tensions that suddenly seemed connected to a larger and more complicated narrative. At the center of the discussion were alleged references concerning Camilla. While the exact wording of the reported journal entry has never been independently verified, speculation quickly intensified around claims that Philip had expressed concerns about future challenges facing the monarchy. Some insiders suggested the remarks were not necessarily personal attacks but rather reflections on public perception, institutional stability, and the delicate balance required to protect the crown. Others argued the concerns were far more direct. The uncertainty only fueled further intrigue. Every unanswered question created 3 new ones, and every attempt to dismiss the story appeared to make it grow stronger. What made the situation even more fascinating was the mystery surrounding the document itself. If the journal entry truly existed, why had it remained hidden for so many years? Was it deliberately protected out of respect for Philip's wishes, or had it simply been overlooked among thousands of pages of archived material? The lack of clear answers transformed the alleged discovery into something much larger than a single journal note. It became a symbol of how many royal secrets may still remain buried beneath decades of carefully guarded history. Palace insiders reportedly found themselves navigating a difficult situation, aware that even the suggestion of a sensitive document could carry enormous consequences for family relationships and public perception alike. As interest continued to build, advisors, commentators, and royal observers all found themselves drawn toward the same unavoidable realization. The alleged journal entry was important not merely because of what it may have said, but because of who wrote it. To understand why its contents were causing such anxiety, it was necessary to look beyond the controversy itself and examine the perspective of the man whose voice still seemed capable of shaking the monarchy long after his passing. And that realization would lead directly to an even deeper question about Philip's influence, his convictions, and the lasting weight of his private words. Long before the modern monarchy became consumed by public controversy, Prince Philip had built a reputation as one of its most practical and uncompromising defenders. He rarely sought headlines, but those who worked alongside him often described a man obsessed with preserving the institution's long-term survival. As scrutiny surrounding the alleged journal entry intensified, observers began asking whether Philip's private concerns may have reflected fears he never expressed publicly. For much of his life, Prince Philip occupied a unique position within the royal family. He stood beside the monarch, supported the crown through decades of transformation, and witnessed challenges that most people could scarcely imagine. Yet despite spending years in the public eye, Philip often remained something of an enigma. Those closest to palace operations frequently portrayed him as a figure who valued practicality over popularity, someone far more concerned with protecting the future of the institution than winning public approval in the present. That reputation is precisely why the reported journal entry has attracted such intense attention. Many believe that if Philip committed a concern to paper, it was not done impulsively. It was likely the result of careful observation, reflection, and a belief that certain issues deserve to be remembered even if they were never openly discussed. Throughout the decades, Philip witnessed the monarchy endure scandals, political shifts, changing social expectations, and relentless media scrutiny. He understood better than almost anyone that royal survival depended on adaptation without losing identity. Friends and former insiders often suggested that he viewed every major development through a single question: would it strengthen the institution or weaken it over time? That mindset allegedly shaped many of his private opinions. While he was known for speaking bluntly behind closed doors, he also understood the importance of discretion. Not every concern became a public statement. Not every disagreement became a public battle. In many cases, silence itself became a strategy. His partnership with Queen Elizabeth II further reinforced that sense of duty. Together, they represented continuity during periods of enormous uncertainty. While the Queen became the symbol of stability, Philip was frequently described as one of the monarchy's most relentless protectors behind the scenes. He reportedly encouraged modernization where necessary, but he also remained deeply cautious of anything that could threaten public trust. That balance between progress and preservation became one of the defining themes of his life. It also explains why growing interest in his private writings has generated such fascination. People are not merely searching for personal opinions. They are searching for insight into how one of the monarchy's most experienced figures viewed the dangers facing the institution he spent a lifetime defending. As reports surrounding the alleged journal entry continued to spread, attention shifted from the document itself to the broader pattern of Philip's thinking. Royal observers began revisiting old interviews, historical accounts, and insider recollections, searching for clues that might explain what he allegedly recorded. The deeper they looked, the more they found references to a man who worried constantly about long-term consequences. Temporary victories meant little if they created future instability. Personal preferences mattered less than institutional survival. These were principles that reportedly guided many of his judgments, and they now seemed more relevant than ever. Yet the growing intrigue was not driven solely by Philip's reputation. It was driven by the possibility that one of his private reflections might contain a warning that was never intended for public consumption. If true, such a revelation could reshape how certain royal relationships are interpreted and force uncomfortable questions about decisions made over many years. The mystery was becoming impossible to ignore. With every passing discussion, anticipation continued to build, because the focus was no longer on whether Philip had concerns. The focus was on what those concerns allegedly involved, and why they remained hidden for so long. And it was within those private writings that reports suggest a deeply controversial warning may have been preserved. According to royal commentators, the controversy centered on one particular passage reportedly discovered among Philip's archived notes. While interpretations vary, reports suggest the entry contained concerns about future influences on the monarchy and the dangers posed by competing loyalties. What transformed the situation into a major story was the claim that Camilla's name appeared within that broader discussion, creating immediate shockwaves throughout royal circles. As speculation surrounding the alleged journal entry intensified, attention quickly narrowed to the passage that many believed sat at the heart of the controversy. The reported wording itself has never been publicly verified, and no authenticated version has emerged for independent examination. Yet that absence of certainty did little to slow the growing fascination. In fact, it had the opposite effect. The mystery surrounding the passage created a vacuum that commentators, royal observers, and historians all rushed to fill. Everyone seemed to be searching for the same answer. What exactly had Prince Philip written that was powerful enough to reignite debates years after his death? According to various accounts circulating among royal commentators, the alleged passage focused less on individual personalities and more on the long-term stability of the institution itself. That distinction became important because Philip's reputation was built on protecting the monarchy rather than engaging in personal disputes. Reports suggested he reflected on the challenges that could emerge when competing priorities, divided loyalties, or conflicting interests began influencing decisions at the highest levels of royal life. To many observers, such concerns sounded entirely consistent with the man who had spent decades worrying about continuity, public trust, and the survival of the crown. But then came the detail that transformed curiosity into controversy. The claim that Camilla's name appeared somewhere within that broader discussion changed everything. Almost immediately, competing interpretations emerged. Some argued that the alleged reference was being exaggerated and removed from its original context. Others believed the mention carried far greater significance than palace insiders were willing to admit. Without access to the actual document, certainty became impossible. Yet uncertainty itself became the fuel driving the story forward. Every discussion seemed to generate a new theory. Every theory produced another layer of intrigue. The result was a controversy that grew larger with each passing day. Historians and royal experts were among the first to urge caution. They reminded audiences that private writings can easily be misunderstood when isolated from the circumstances in which they were written. A single sentence, they argued, rarely tells the full story. Context matters, timing matters, intent matters. What appears alarming when quoted alone may carry a completely different meaning when viewed within an entire journal entry. Their warnings were reasonable, yet they struggled to slow the momentum. The public fascination was no longer centered solely on historical accuracy. It was centered on the possibility that a respected royal figure had privately documented concerns that were never intended to become public knowledge. What made the situation even more explosive was the response from official channels. There was no detailed explanation, no comprehensive clarification, no definitive statement capable of ending the speculation. That silence created an atmosphere where questions multiplied faster than answers. Some interpreted the lack of response as evidence that the claims were overblown. Others viewed it as a sign that the matter was far more sensitive than anyone realized. In royal affairs, silence often becomes a story of its own, and in this case, it only deepened the sense of mystery surrounding the alleged warning. As weeks of discussion continued, the focus gradually shifted away from the exact wording of the passage and toward its possible implications. If Philip had truly recorded concerns about future influences on the monarchy, what did he believe was at stake? Why preserve such thoughts in writing? And why did those reflections appear capable of generating such strong reactions years later? Those questions lingered over every conversation, ensuring that the controversy would not fade quietly. Instead, it continued building momentum, because yet the reaction to the alleged warning proved almost as dramatic as the warning itself. For years, Princess Anne has been viewed as the monarchy's most relentless defender of tradition. Reports suggest she faced a difficult choice once the journal entry resurfaced. Ignore it and allow the document to remain buried. Acknowledge it and risk reigniting old tensions. According to various royal observers, Anne ultimately chose transparency over silence, setting the stage for a confrontation nobody had anticipated. By the time discussions surrounding Prince Philip's alleged journal entry reached its peak, attention was no longer focused solely on what had been written. Increasingly, people were asking another question entirely. Why had the document resurfaced now, and what role had Princess Anne played in bringing renewed attention to it? For many royal observers, Anne was not simply another member of the family. She represented continuity, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to the traditions that had shaped the monarchy for generations. Her reputation had been built over decades of service, often away from the spotlight, earning respect even from critics who disagreed with the institution itself. Because of that reputation, any suggestion that Anne had taken an interest in Philip's private writings immediately carried enormous weight. According to reports circulating among commentators, Anne's alleged review of archived materials was not part of a search for controversy. Instead, it was reportedly connected to broader efforts to preserve and organize historical records associated with her father's legacy. Yet what may have begun as a routine examination of the past soon became something far more complicated. If the accounts are accurate, Anne found herself confronting a difficult reality. A document linked to one of the monarchy's most influential figures, appeared capable of generating significant public debate. The question then became whether acknowledging its existence would serve the interests of transparency or merely reopen old wounds that time had never fully healed. That dilemma reportedly triggered intense conversations among advisors and individuals familiar with royal protocol. On one side stood those who believed historical documents should be understood within their proper context, regardless of how uncomfortable they might be. On the other side were voices warning that incomplete information could easily be misinterpreted, creating unnecessary controversy and damaging relationships that had taken years to stabilize. Neither position offered an easy solution. Every possible decision carried consequences. Every path forward seemed to involve risk. What made the situation especially sensitive was Anne's long-standing image as a guardian of royal duty. Throughout her life, she had often been portrayed as someone willing to place institutional responsibility above personal convenience. That perception fueled speculation that if she truly engaged with the document, she would have approached it with extraordinary seriousness. For supporters of greater transparency, that was reassuring. For those concerned about the potential fallout, it was unsettling. The more Anne's name became connected to the story, the more public interest intensified. Suddenly, what had once been a discussion about a forgotten journal entry evolved into a broader debate about accountability, history, and the responsibility of preserving the truth. As pressure mounted, senior royals reportedly found themselves navigating increasingly difficult territory. Commentators dissected every rumor. Analysts debated every possibility. The absence of clear explanations only magnified public curiosity. What exactly had Anne concluded after reviewing the material? Did she believe the alleged warning deserved attention? Or was the controversy growing far beyond its original significance? No definitive answers emerged, but the questions themselves became impossible to ignore. The situation created a striking contrast between Anne's reputation for stability and the turbulence now surrounding the alleged discovery. A woman known for avoiding drama had become linked to one of the most talked-about royal controversies in years. Whether intentionally or not, her reported involvement transformed the discussion from speculation about the past into a story with immediate implications for the present. And as that momentum continued building, the focus began shifting away from the document, away from Philip, and even away from Anne herself. As news of the journal spread, attention quickly shifted from Anne's actions to Camilla's position. What began as a discussion about historical records soon evolved into something much larger. The controversy was no longer centered on a single journal entry or even a single individual. Instead, it became a fierce debate about influence, loyalty, power, and the lasting impact of decisions made behind palace walls. As reports about the alleged document continued spreading, Camilla found herself placed at the center of renewed scrutiny. Supporters argued that historical opinions should remain exactly where they belong in the past. Critics disagreed, insisting that concerns recorded by one of the monarchy's most experienced figures deserved serious consideration, regardless of when they were written. The result was an increasingly divided conversation that reignited questions many believed had been settled years ago. At the heart of the debate was a difficult and deeply uncomfortable question. Should concerns allegedly expressed decades earlier still carry weight in an entirely different royal era? Historians, commentators, and former palace insiders offered conflicting answers. Some warned against judging modern realities through the lens of old fears, arguing that institutions must evolve if they hope to survive. Others countered that history exists precisely because it contains lessons future generations ignore at their own risk. That disagreement transformed the alleged journal entry into something far more significant than a forgotten personal reflection. It became a symbol of the ongoing struggle between preserving tradition and embracing change. As public fascination intensified, attention shifted toward the broader implications of the controversy. People were no longer asking only what Philip may have written. They were asking what the debate revealed about the monarchy itself. Questions about institutional memory, influence, and long-term stability began overshadowing the original claims. Every interpretation seemed to expose a different fault line within the royal narrative. The deeper observers examined the controversy. The clearer it became that this was not simply a story about Camilla or even Philip. It was a story about how the monarchy confronts its past while attempting to shape its future. And as the arguments continued growing louder, a new realization began emerging, one that would push the entire discussion into even more unexpected territory. The deeper investigators looked, the less this controversy seemed to be about one individual alone. What started as a private archival discovery soon echoed far beyond the walls of royal history. Commentators across Britain and around the world reached dramatically different conclusions. Some viewed the alleged journal entry as evidence of Prince Philip's remarkable foresight, believing it reflected concerns about the monarchy that continue to resonate today. Others argued it was nothing more than a private reflection from a man shaped by a different era, never intended to guide future generations. Yet regardless of where people stood, one reality became impossible to ignore. The controversy had grown far beyond the document itself. As debate intensified, royal experts, historians, and former insiders found themselves examining not only Philip's words but also the legacy he left behind. Questions about family dynamics, decision-making, loyalty, and institutional stability suddenly returned to the forefront of public discussion. The continued silence from official palace channels only deepened the fascination. With every unanswered question, public curiosity grew stronger. People were no longer focused solely on whether the alleged warning was right or wrong. Instead, they became captivated by what the debate revealed about the monarchy's enduring struggle to balance tradition with change. And perhaps that is where the true significance of this story ultimately lies. In the end, the most important part of the controversy may not be the journal entry itself. It may be the reminder that legacy continues to shape the present long after individuals are gone. Prince Philip spent decades devoted to an institution he believed should outlast every personality, every disagreement, and every generation. Whether the reported warning proves prophetic, misunderstood, or somewhere in between, it has reignited a conversation about duty, responsibility, and the price of preserving continuity in an ever-changing world. The deeper people examined the story, the clearer it became that this was never simply about one document or one individual. It was about the lasting influence of history itself. Historical records may remain hidden for years, but the ideas they contain can continue influencing perceptions long after they are written. That reality has transformed legacy into the final battleground of this debate, ensuring that the questions raised by the alleged journal entry will not disappear anytime soon. Because within the House of Windsor, people may pass on, but their warnings can continue shaping history long after they are gone. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.